The first time I saw her pouring coffee in that cafe with its ocean view, I didn't think about consequences. I thought only about the way she moved, with such certainty in every gesture, as if mixing espresso and milk was an art form. Her hands were steady, practiced, beautiful in their economy of motion. Every movement had purpose. Every tilt of the cup, every pull of the espresso machine, every careful pour of steamed milk into the ceramic, it all spoke of someone who had found her small corner of mastery in an otherwise chaotic world. My name is Jim. I'm a project manager at a construction company specializing in hotel renovations along the Atlantic City coastline. The work demands frequent meetings with various teams, trips to multiple offices, on-site inspections. In essence, I always had legitimate reasons to be downtown, in the district where everything revolves around beaches and tourism. I had built a career on being mobile, on never staying in one place long enough to develop real roots. Atlantic City became my territory, from the northern neighborhoods where the old casinos stood like faded monuments to past glory, down to the southern beaches where new developments were constantly rising from the sand. I knew every street, every intersection, every cafe that served decent coffee. Or at least I did before Coast Breeze became the only place that mattered. Coast Breeze, a small cafe with a view of the Atlantic Ocean, is where I started appearing regularly. Initially, my motivation was purely professional. The place was quiet, had good Wi-Fi, and served quality coffee. The owner, a man named Eric in his 60s, didn't bother customers who set up laptops for hours. He understood the freelance lifestyle, understood that sometimes people needed a place to work that wasn't an office. The cafe was located on a side street, about a block from the main boardwalk, making it perfect for ducking away from the constant tourist flow. Then my motivation changed completely. Her name was Evelina. She worked as a barista, coming in for the afternoon and evening shifts. Black hair always pulled back in a neat ponytail, green eyes that seemed perpetually sad even when she smiled. When taking orders, she didn't just write espresso on the cup. She drew little pictures. A cat. A star. A cloud. Through different seasons and months, I watched her artistic style evolve. The cats became more detailed, their expressions more animated. The stars grew in complexity, sometimes surrounded by moons or tiny planets. The clouds transformed into abstract patterns that bordered on the philosophical. After a few weeks, she started drawing them specifically for me, as if we shared some private language that others couldn't understand. I have those cups at home. 37 of them stacked in a box in my closet. Some days I take them out and wonder what kind of man keeps coffee cups like trophies. For the first 2 months, I knew her only as a customer. Espresso, no sugar, with an extra shot, please, Evelina. She would nod, smile, and draw a cat with enormous ears on my cup. Sometimes she'd write my name, just Jim, in the corner, as if confirming that I was a real person, not just a phantom that appeared with the afternoon light. That was all. Just a small ritual that made my day feel less empty, less meaningless. I looked forward to those moments with an intensity that now, looking back, seems almost pathological. I started timing my visits. Monday mornings were too early, she wouldn't be there yet. Friday evenings were crowded, and I had to share her attention with other customers. Tuesday through Thursday afternoons became my target window. 2:47 p.m. was her official start time. I would arrive at 2:45, order a regular coffee from whoever was working the morning shift, and sit at my usual table by the window. Then, at exactly 2:47, she would walk through the door. Then one afternoon, between orders, I asked if she did anything after work. I asked it casually, as if I were inquiring about local movie theaters, trying to sound indifferent even though my hands were trembling slightly. I remember the weather that day, sunny, warm for early March, the kind of spring day that makes you believe anything is possible. The sky was that particular shade of blue that you only see in early spring, before summer bleaches the color out of everything. A couple was walking on the beach with a golden retriever. The ocean was gentle, almost playful. It was the kind of day that makes people believe in new beginnings. She told me about Luke that same moment. She informed me that she was married. For years already. Her husband's name was Luke, and he was a taxi driver. She said it like it was some kind of shield, something she was wielding to protect herself from me, from whatever she could sense building between us. The way she said his name, Luke, it had a weight to it. Not heavy with affection, but heavy with obligation. Like the name of someone you've made a promise to and aren't sure you can keep. She didn't smile when she mentioned him. She just stated the facts, straightforward, like a doctor reading test results. I pulled back. I tried to be smart, responsible. The kind of man who understands boundaries. A full week passed without me visiting Coast Breeze. But my projects required me to be on the waterfront constantly, and somehow my feet always carried me back to that cafe. It was like gravity, inevitable, inescapable, impossible to resist no matter how hard you tried. During that week away, I found myself driving past the cafe 3 times without stopping. Once I saw her through the window, laughing at something one of her co-workers said. Brittany, I think her name was. They were leaning against the counter, heads close together, and Evelina's whole face had transformed. For just a moment she didn't look sad at all. She looked young and free and alive. That image tortured me more than anything that came later. It was the 3rd week when she herself initiated a conversation. She mentioned that she missed our talks about my work. She said it casually, wiping down the espresso machine, her eyes on the work rather than on me, but I heard the vulnerability in her voice. She suggested lunch. Just as friends, she said. 2 people having a meal together and talking. I knew it was a lie from the very beginning. But I agreed anyway because I was too weak not to. Because a man who is drowning doesn't question where the life preserver comes from, he just grabs onto it and holds on for dear life. The first lunch was at an Italian restaurant on the street near the cafe, a place called Marino's, that specialized in homemade pasta and had red and white checkered tablecloths like something from an old movie. She wore a green dress that matched her eyes, and I remember thinking that this was either the most natural thing in the world or the most calculated seduction. I still don't know which. She talked about her job, how she dreamed of something bigger than mixing milk with coffee all day. About wanting to move to California. She had specific plans, I realized. Not just vague wishes. She talked about working in a specialty coffee shop in San Diego, about learning to roast her own beans, about eventually opening her own place that would serve not just coffee but also sell art from local artists. These weren't passing fantasies. These were dreams she had apparently constructed in meticulous detail, probably during the quiet moments before her shift started, when she was alone in the cafe with her thoughts. About how she and Luke had bought their apartment 3 years ago, and it had consumed every penny they'd saved, but she thought it was worth it if they would be together. But then Luke became too busy, and she started noticing that they talked about weather instead of dreams, about his new friends from the taxi dispatch instead of their shared future. She described it almost clinically, like she was reciting observations about a patient rather than talking about her own life. She said he would come home late, smelling of car air freshener and exhaust fumes, and he would eat whatever she'd prepared in silence, then fall asleep on the couch. Sometimes he would wake up at midnight and go to bed properly. Sometimes he didn't. She said that last year she tried to plan a romantic dinner for their anniversary, their 3rd anniversary, March 15th. She had made reservations at a nice place, the same restaurant where he had proposed to her. But he had a big taxi job that day, some business executive who wanted to go to Atlantic City, and it would pay triple rate because of the distance. He apologized. She said it was fine. She went to the restaurant alone and ate dinner by herself. This was the first crack in their armor, and I caught it immediately. I caught it and I pried it open with my fingers, making it wider, deeper, more catastrophic. I listened to her, asked more questions, showed interest that Luke apparently had lost somewhere along the way between passenger bookings and car maintenance payments. I was slowly becoming the man her husband had stopped being, at least in her eyes. And the worst part was that I knew exactly what I was doing. I wasn't some innocent bystander who stumbled into this situation. I was deliberately, methodically, with full awareness of my own culpability, working to destroy her marriage. The lunches became regular. First once a week, then twice, then 3 times. I fabricated reasons constantly. Need to meet with an interior designer who works in the area. The quality controller is arriving earlier than expected. There's a permits issue with the new project. I need to think it through. My excuses piled up like autumn leaves, each one as flimsy as the last, yet she accepted every single one. And I'm still not sure if she accepted them because she believed them, or because she wanted an excuse to see me. I think in the end we were both willing participants in our own lie. We both needed a story we could tell ourselves, some narrative that would let us pretend we weren't making a choice. We were victims of circumstance. We were caught up in something beyond our control. We were just 2 people who happened to keep running into each other. My assistant at work, a woman named Melinda, started to notice. She'd catch me checking my phone, looking at the clock. One day she asked if I was okay. I told her I was just stressed about the projects. She didn't believe me, I could see it in her face, but she didn't push. She was professional enough to understand that people sometimes have things they don't want to talk about. I was grateful for that courtesy, even though I didn't deserve it. April 2024 arrived with brilliant weather. The month brought warm days where you could sit on the beach for just a few minutes, pretending the world wasn't falling apart around you. Atlantic City was waking up from its winter sleep. Tourists started arriving in greater numbers. The boardwalk filled with families, couples, groups of friends looking to escape their ordinary lives. The sky was blue as I had expected, but Evelina looked even bluer against it, more fragile, more beautiful, more desperately sad. I started to see the weight she was carrying. The way she would massage the back of her neck when she thought no one was looking. The dark circles under her eyes that no amount of concealer could completely hide. One April Saturday, I invited her somewhere different. Not to lunch. To a romantic dinner in a restaurant on the waterside, a place called Cape May, several miles southeast of Atlantic City. The drive took about 30 minutes, far enough that no one from her cafe colleagues or my office could possibly see us together. The geography was calculated. I knew that distance. I had studied maps, calculated drive times, identified the blind spots in our mutual social networks. I was not an innocent man seized by passion. I was a hunter who had studied his prey. She asked, "Is this a date?" "You can call it whatever you want," I answered. She took my hand in the car. The first time. I felt it as a victory, as cold ice cream on a hot day, as a feeling I'd always wanted but had no right to experience. Her hands were smaller than I expected. Softer. I remember thinking that these were the hands that drew cats on coffee cups, and now those same hands were holding my hand. It felt symbolic of something, though I wasn't sure what. Dinner was exquisite. Moro's Bistro sat directly by the water, with soft red lighting and colors of the sunset over the Atlantic Ocean reflecting on everything. She ordered fish, I ordered steak. We breathed near each other, spoke in hushed tones like children playing a forbidden game. The other diners became invisible to us. The waiter would approach with food or wine, and we would both speak in low voices, creating a small bubble of intimacy that somehow isolated us from the rest of the world. "I shouldn't be doing this," she said. "I know," I replied. "He's a good person." "He doesn't deserve this." "I know." "And me? What do I deserve?" "I know," I replied. "He's a good person." "He doesn't deserve this." "I know." "And me? What do I deserve?" I didn't know how to answer. I simply took her hand and kissed the tips of her fingers, hoping that touch could communicate what words never could. We stayed at the restaurant until it began to close. The staff started stacking chairs on tables around us and we took the hint. In the car, she leaned her head against the window and watched the ocean pass by in the darkness. I kept one hand on her knee. Neither of us spoke. The silence felt heavier than any conversation could have been. I drove slowly on the way back, deliberately taking the long route, the scenic route, anything to extend those hours. She told me about her childhood, how her parents had wanted her to be a lawyer, how she'd rebelled and opened the door to hospitality instead, thinking it would be more creative. How she felt like a perpetual disappointment to them. How she'd been trying to prove something to herself ever since, but she still wasn't sure what. She told me about her first serious boyfriend, a man named Sam who worked in finance and left her for someone with a trust fund. She told me about the therapist she saw for 6 months when she was 25, and how the therapist had told her that she had a tendency to seek out unavailable men because deep down, she was afraid of genuine intimacy. She said that after that realization she thought she'd changed. She thought she was ready for something real. She thought Luke was real. By the time I dropped her off at her apartment, Luke wasn't home. He was on a long-distance job to Philadelphia. It was nearly midnight. She lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a complex called Seaview Heights. The building was beige, the landscaping was minimal, and the parking lot was half empty. It was the kind of place where people lived who were just getting started, or people who had given up trying to do better. I wondered which category Luke and Evelina fell into. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and click like if you enjoy this story. I always read your comments and analyze which stories you like best so that I can create better stories. Thank you. I will continue the story. By the 3rd month, she told me about the pregnancy. We were in my car, parked on the waterfront, far from the road, near the lighthouse area where few people ever ventured. The world collapsed on us like a thick, hot stone. "The test is positive," she said, and her hand was shaking. She showed me the test stick, 2 clear pink lines, the proof of consequence written in biological markers. I took 3 tests. All positive. I went to a clinic the day before yesterday. They did blood work. It's confirmed. I felt powerful and monstrous at the same time. I was going to be a father. But a father of another man's child. A father while her husband drove around the city on its backstreets, unaware that his home was crumbling in his absence, that everything he'd built was turning to dust. The realization should have devastated me. Instead, I felt a strange kind of exhilaration. This was real now. This was permanent. This couldn't be undone by either of us simply walking away. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "I don't know," she said. "I haven't thought that far. I had to tell you first. You deserve to know before anyone else. Are you going to keep it?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, I am. I know what that means. I know what it complicates. But I've always wanted to be a mother and I can't." She couldn't finish the sentence. I held her while she cried. She cried quietly, the way someone cries who has learned not to make a fuss, not to burden others with her pain. She cried into my chest and I felt the warmth of her tears seeping through my shirt, and I thought about Luke, about how he had no idea that his entire world was about to crack open. She told Luke 3 days later. She couldn't hold it in anymore. She thought about how it would happen when she got fatter, when her belly would show through her clothes. When she'd need to go for ultrasounds and hear the heartbeat. The guilt had been eating her alive from the inside, burrowing through her like a parasite, consuming everything it touched. She said she would rather he hear it from her than discover it some other way. At least this way she could maintain some illusion of control. What she told me later was that Luke went completely silent for a long time after she told him. They were in the apartment in their small living room with the view of the parking lot. She sat on one end of the couch. He sat on the other. The television was playing, some show neither of them was watching, and the sound was the only thing filling the space between them. "Is it mine?" he finally asked. "No," she said. "It's not." He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just asked the next logical question, "Whose?" And she told him. She told him about me. About the cafe. About the lunches. About Cape May. She told him everything, laying it all out like a confession to a priest, except this priest wasn't offering absolution. He was offering judgment, and judgment is so much worse. Luke came to my office. He drove his taxi right to the front entrance, parked it there without caring what anyone thought, and walked in. My assistant Eric asked if he should let him through. I said yes. I don't know why. Some part of me wanted this confrontation. Some part of me wanted to face what I had done. Luke didn't hit me. He was better than that. He just stood before me, hands at his sides, his eyes as cold as the Atlantic Ocean in December. He looked tired. He looked like a man who had been driving for 16 hours straight, carrying passengers who barely acknowledged his existence, and had come directly from his cab to this office without even going home to shower or change clothes. "I'm not going to tell everyone you're a coward," he said directly to my face. "I'm not going to play drama. I just want to be free. From you both." That week he filed for divorce. Everything ended quickly. Evelina didn't fight back. She knew she'd lost any right to take a position in this conflict. Luke received a fair settlement, half of their shared apartment equity, which wasn't much since they'd only paid off about 30% of the mortgage, and half of their modest savings. Evelina received custody of their unborn child. Her mother agreed to help from her home in Connecticut. Luke kept his taxi, kept his apartment temporarily until he could arrange to sell his share of it, and asked for one thing, that neither of them contact him. Not calls, not texts, not messages through mutual friends. Complete silence. Complete separation. And both Evelina and I, recognizing that we had no right to deny him this, agreed. I remember going to the courthouse the day the divorce was finalized. Evelina and Luke didn't speak to each other. They stood on opposite sides of the courtroom. The judge read the terms, a standard Atlantic County divorce, processed efficiently because there were no children, no significant assets to divide, and both parties were in agreement. It took about 20 minutes. When it was over, Luke turned and left without looking at either of us. Evelina tried to reach out to say something, but I put my hand on her back and steered her away. There was nothing left to say. And me? I stayed with Evelina. Sophia was born at the end of July. A girl with black hair like her mother's and eyes like mine, brown, almost black in full light. Every time I looked at her, I couldn't decide if I was experiencing fatherly love or just the satisfaction of a conqueror. The birth was difficult. Evelina was in labor for 18 hours. The doctors became concerned. There was talk of a C-section. But finally, just as they were preparing for surgery, Sophia came into the world, purple and angry and demanding, and Evelina held her and cried for hours. I held my daughter for the first time in the hospital's sterile delivery room, and I tried to feel joy. I tried to feel the uncomplicated love that fathers are supposed to feel. But all I could think about was Luke, and whether he had felt this same overwhelming sense of wonder when he imagined the child he thought he would have with Evelina. All I could think about was what I had stolen from him. We moved together to a smaller house in Ventnor, about 10 miles south of Atlantic City. A less expensive neighborhood, fewer people who knew each other's business. A neighborhood of transient renters and people reinventing themselves. The house was a small single-family structure, painted a faded yellow color, with a patchy lawn and a porch that needed some work. I could have fixed it. My job had given me connections to contractors, but I didn't. I left it in disrepair, as if the deterioration of the house was a physical manifestation of the deterioration of my soul. Evelina couldn't work as a barista anymore with a newborn. She stayed home while I provided for them both. New roles, new identities, new ways of pretending everything was normal. I would go to work, oversee projects, attend meetings where I was just another professional in business casual attire. No one could see what I was. No one could see the man I had become. But Evelina changed. She was no longer the girl who drew little cats on coffee cups. She became a mother sitting by the window, staring at the beach, which she no longer wanted to leave because she was terrified of being seen, of running into someone who knew. She was a woman imprisoned by her own choices, and I was the prison guard maintaining the bars. Sometimes I would find her staring at nothing, tears running silently down her face, and when I asked what was wrong, she would just shake her head and say nothing. One day, 3 months after Sophia's birth, she said to me, "I don't know how I hear myself at night. How can you sleep?" "I can't," I told her, and it was the truth. "You know how this will end? Sophia will grow up and she'll ask about her father. About Luke. And what will I tell her? That I betrayed him with the man who seduced me? That I destroyed her father's life so I could have a baby?" I had no answer to that. Months turned into years. Sophia grew from a pale infant into an active toddler who walked, ran, talked incessantly. She had my eyes, but she had Evelina's way of tilting her head when she was thinking. I would catch myself watching her sometimes and feeling this complicated mixture of love and dread. She was innocent in all of this. She was the product of our selfishness, but she herself bore no responsibility for how she came to exist. I saw Luke once. He drove past us on the street. I was sitting with Sophia on a bench near the boardwalk, teaching her to read letters on billboards, pointing out the S in see and the P in peer. She was 3 years old, pointing at things with complete certainty about what they were, asking questions about everything. His taxi drove past. I'm not even sure he saw us. But I saw him. I saw how thin he had become. How his hands, gripping the steering wheel, looked like they belonged to someone much older than him. And then the taxi turned a corner and he was gone. Evelina wanted to have another child. She asked me about it a week ago. I didn't give her an answer. I said we needed more time. But truthfully, I wasn't sure if I loved Evelina, or if I loved the fact that I'd brought her down. And every time I looked at Sophia, I asked myself, is this built on happiness or on lies? Is she happy because her parents love each other, or because her mother has learned to hide her misery so well that she's almost convinced herself it doesn't exist? One night Evelina asked me, "Have you ever wondered how she lives?" Who? I knew exactly who she meant. I had been wondering the same thing constantly. Look, his new wife. Did he marry again? Is he happy? I don't know, I said. I want to find out, she said. Why? Because I need to believe that he found something beautiful. Something I didn't know about, but that was truly waiting for him. Something that I could have given him if I were a different person. Someone better. Someone who deserved him. This was the saddest thing I'd ever heard from her. Because I understood in that moment that she had never forgiven herself. And perhaps worse, she understood that I would never forgive myself either. I searched for Luke on social media. Found his profile. No girlfriend. No significant other. Just photos of his taxi driver friends, and occasionally a sunset photograph. Nothing more. His life looked like the life of a man trying to fill an emptiness that couldn't be filled, searching for meaning in work and exhaustion and the company of people who understood what it meant to be forgotten. His Instagram bio read simply, "I drive. I think. I exist." And I understood that this was his statement about his own life, a life reduced to its bare essentials, stripped of joy, containing only the fundamental acts necessary to continue breathing. I showed this to Evelina. She looked and started crying. "He's alone?" she asked. "Apparently so. Because of what I did to him?" I had no answer for that either. Because the answer was yes, and saying it out loud would destroy whatever fragile peace we had constructed in our household. Now, 5 years later, I live in a house with a woman and a child I love. I'm sure of that much, but not in the way I should. And I often just sit on the edge of the bed, watching the ocean glimmer in the distance, and I think about Luke. About how he spent the entire day driving people who didn't care about him, and came home to a woman who betrayed him. About how he packed his bags and simply left. About what it took to walk away from everything he'd built, everything he believed in. And I understand now that real punishment isn't laughter. Real punishment is solitude. It's the acceptance that you'll never trust quietly again. That every good feeling you ever had will be permanently shadowed by sadness. That you built your happiness on someone else's suffering, and that knowledge never truly leaves you. That knowledge is the background noise of your existence. It's there every morning when you wake up. It's there when you look at your daughter. It's there when your wife touches your hand. Evelina sometimes falls asleep on my shoulder. Sophia paints pictures on the refrigerator door. I live in a house built on someone else's anguish, and I feel the weight of those foundations every single day and every single night. The walls are solid. The roof doesn't leak. By any objective measure, it's a good house. But I feel like I'm living in a tomb sometimes, surrounded by ghosts of what might have been. This is my punishment. This is my guilt. This is everything I'll have to bear. I wonder sometimes if Luke ever found what he was looking for. I wonder if he forgave Evelina, or if he decided that some betrayals are simply too deep to forgive. I wonder if he still drives that taxi or if he found something else, something that helped him forget. I wonder if he's learned to live with the knowledge that the woman he loved chose someone else, chose our child over him, chose a future that didn't include him at all. I'll never know the answers to these questions. And perhaps that's the cruelest punishment of all, not knowing if the person you hurt ever found their way back to happiness. Not knowing if your actions permanently scarred them or if they eventually healed and moved on. Living with the possibility that you changed someone's life for the worse, and having absolutely no way to repair the damage you caused. Sophia is growing up. Soon she'll be old enough to notice things, to ask questions, to wonder why she looks different from me, why her last name is mine but her father isn't. And when that day comes, I'll have to tell her the truth. Or I'll have to lie. Either way I lose. Either way, I pass my guilt down to another generation, teaching my daughter that love is negotiable, that promises are optional, that betrayal is just another relationship milestone. Evelina has stopped asking me about Luke. She's accepted that she'll never know what became of him, and maybe that's better. Maybe wondering is its own kind of torture, and she's found peace in not knowing. Or maybe she's simply learned to live with the guilt the way I have. Maybe we're both just going through the motions now, two people who once set the world on fire and are now living in the cold ashes. We don't talk about the cafe anymore. We don't talk about Cape May. We don't talk about any of it. We exist in a kind of careful, deliberate silence, the way people exist in a house after a death, going through the motions, maintaining the routines, never quite acknowledging the tragedy that lives among us. Sometimes I catch Evelina looking at me and I see the question in her eyes. Are you happy? Do you regret this? Do you ever wish you'd been a better man? But she never asks. And I'm grateful for that because I don't know how I would answer. The ocean is still beautiful here. It never stops being beautiful. But I can't look at it anymore without thinking about Luke standing in front of me in my office, his eyes like ice water, telling me he just wanted to be free. And I realize now that what he meant wasn't free from Evelina. He meant free from hope. Free from the belief that love was worth anything. Free from the idea that putting your heart in someone else's hands meant it would be kept safe. I took that from him. And I'm learning day by day that some things once taken away can never truly be given back. Thank you for watching this video. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. The screen now displays a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.